Hello folks, welcome back to my YouTube channel. My name is Brian. I make some videos on my 2020 Ducati Monster 821. Got some lint over it. It's cold outside, so I'm back in my garage as usual. I kind of like it in the garage because I can control the lighting and the sound, as I live in a very busy city and you have tons of traffic and cars, so there's tons and tons of noise, and noise bugs the crap out of me when you're trying to make a video. But today I want to talk to you about, I hear a lot of people, when I say a lot of people, that's up for interpretation, because obviously it's not a lot of people because my channel is not that big. But I do hear from time to time that people mention that the quick shifter, okay? I recently installed the Ducati, the actual Ducati quick shifter on this bike. It didn't come with it, and I installed it on there. But a lot of people will comment, when I say a lot of people, again, take that into consideration. People, I need to focus on that. People will say that the Ducati shifter works okay. It doesn't work sometimes. Sometimes it does work. Sometimes they hit a bunch of false neutrals, or they, going from third to fourth, they'll hit, an in-between gear. And I think I've got the solution to that. I'm by no means a professional Ducati mechanic or a professional trained motorcycle mechanic. So just take everything I say with a grain of salt and just consider it. But I have been riding for like 35 years. Actually, let's see, maybe 42 years. Let's step it up a little bit, 42, because I started riding when I was about 9 or 10. A little fuzzy because I can't remember if I was about 9.5 or I was 10. But I've been riding consistently for all that time on motocross, dirt, trail riding, dual sport, cruiser, sport bike, a lot more sport bike than basic road bike. Also mountain bike and e-bike, and I have a lot of put a lot into learning everything about the bikes that I have. So, but let me talk to you about today and what's important. Okay, so when it comes to setting up your Ducati quick shifter, you need to pay special attention to what type of footwear you're primarily going to use. It's very important. And the reason why is, from motocross bikes to all the sport bikes and every motorcycle probably in general, the designer builds an amount of adjustability into all the controls, your hand controls, your foot controls, everything, so that, because people are different sizes, different weights, different ratios per their upper portion of their body to their legs, and then even their feet to their knee to their waist is different. So when different people sit on the same motorcycle, there will be all kinds of different riding positions. Also, too, to add, you could be the same size as another rider, but you could prefer a little bit different, further back on the seat, more forward on the seat. You can ride on the balls of your feet, or you can ride on more your heel, or more towards the center of your foot. So all this has to be put into play, and it's very important to customize your motorcycle's controls so that you can make the bike fit you. One thing you can do, and you as a rider, as you get more advanced and you kind of get more involved in the sport of motorcycling, and you get your motorcycle, you'll spend a considerable amount of time, or you should, setting up your controls so that they fit you personally. The more comfortable you are on a motorcycle, the more enjoyment you have, and the safer you can be. Okay, so just starting out, in the very, very basics, is your brake and your clutch. I sure would like to get some adjustable levers on my bike, as far as for adjustable reach on my clutch. This is a cable clutch and not a hydraulic clutch, and I have no adjustment as far as being able to adjust the reach, and so it just sits pretty much wide open. And I don't have super large hands. I don't have small hands, but I don't have monster hands. So when I'm reaching my lever right here, I would probably like my lever to be about positioned right there. So I need a lever that has some adjustability in it that will always let it rest at that position right there. You can add a little bit more play. This is a barrel adjuster, which you can adjust the play as your cable stretches. So you can add a little bit more play to that. So you have a little bit more play between this space right here. Hopefully you can see that. But so I have that in there. But again, when it comes out, it stops at its full open position. So when I ride, I would much rather have being able to put my fingers over it where I just automatically reach at it right there. So you got to buy aftermarket levers to do that, and they're like $190, $250 for some nice adjustable levers. And 10% looks, but a 90% function is when it comes to getting a right set of levers. Let me also tell you that the height of your levers, as far as how far tilted down they are or how far they are tilted up, comes into the comfort, and also too the position of your brake or your clutch on the handlebar this way. I have spent probably hours and hours riding and then coming in and fixing it, and where I don't really ride with 4 fingers on my levers. I really maximum I like 2, and in a perfect world I like 1. But I'm more of a 2 on my clutch because it is a little more of a pull. But on the brake lever, I do like, since this is such an awesome brake, the Brembo brake, and it has such great feel to it, I am more comfortable with 1 finger on that always. And this does have some adjustability on it, so you can adjust as it sits stationary. You can move it in a little bit, but for some reason, when I move it in, this has a little bit more sponge feel, especially when the brakes are cold. But when they're warmed up and you pump them, and then you don't have as much play in the brake. But when you start out early in the morning, this will almost come a lot closer to your other fingers. So it's kind of weird. It's kind of a weird setup. But you want to position these so you don't want to jump on your bike, and when you put your hand on your grips, you don't want your finger to touch right here. I mean, you get a little bit more leverage out here than you do leverage right here, but it's all about comfort. Where you like to, when you come in and sit on the bike, where you like to have your finger fall. This is where I like to have my finger fall. And then also too, your adjustability as far as, up this direction or down that direction. In the best of my knowledge over 40 years of reading magazines and riding and racing, it's better. In general, it's not a must-do, but you want to have your levers down more than you definitely don't want them aiming up, and it's not as good having them straight forward. You want them down. So when you're riding, your elbows are going to be more up in the air rather than down. That's a more aggressive riding position with your arms up instead of down. Riding like that, you want your arms up a little bit, and so that positioning that lever down a little bit forces your elbows to be up a little bit more. So you can just always play around with that. But this is huge, setting this stuff up correctly. One thing I would like to do, and I haven't found the perfect solution for this bike with how I want to set it up, is that still when this brake is all the way out, or I have it adjusted where I think I want it as far as pull right here. See, it's not too far away from my finger, so you don't want to pull it in and hit your other finger. So that the overall moving of it is good, is about max I could do. But I wish I could set the pull to rest about right there. So when I'm riding, I have a tendency to not feel comfortable riding with my finger hanging right here. If it was more over the lever, I would be more comfortable. But riding like this and twisting the throttle, I don't feel comfortable with my finger just kind of touching on it like a trigger of a pistol. I'd like to have it a little bit more over the front of it. So I need a lever that I can adjust a little bit more in and have the basic best of both worlds. And why that is important, you want to ride with your finger on the brake, because I'm going to tell you why that's such a big difference. Why I feel that you should always ride with 1 or 2 fingers on your front brake lever is most of your braking like 75% of your braking comes from your front brake. And in an emergency situation, your front brake is going to be your most of your braking is coming from your front brake. With ABS setups and ECU setups, some of the bikes you pull in the front brake and it actually is smart enough to know that it needs to send some brake pressure to the rear brake so that you don't get too much brake on the front. Plus you've got ABS these days. But this is for the people that used to ride in the 90s and the early 2000s and the 80s. It was, braking was all on you. Now with ABS and modern ECU and programming and things, it's a lot more safer in that regards. But riding around, say someone pulls out in front of you and you're riding and you just have milliseconds to see the person pull in front of you, and then you've got to make the other milliseconds to raise your fingers up and pull this in and then pull it in. So you've got lost seconds there of precious time that you need to be on the brakes. So when you have your fingers already on the brakes and you see someone, you're processing it at the same speed, but your fingers are already on there. So you're saving, milliseconds of time. But in milliseconds of time, that could save you from hitting the car or having to lay the bike down or getting in an accident. So having your fingers on your brakes and being always prepared to pull that in, I think is a benefit, and will obviously could save your life sometime, or keep you from falling on the ground. But so that's another important feature. I'd love my brake to sit about right here, but then bite about right there. So instead of coming all the way out, have it sit right there, and then have it the bite be right in there. As you can see, my bite is a little bit more in. The bike brake line is cold, the fluid is cold, but so I just need to, man up one day and buy some adjustable levers. That would be probably beneficial. But again, $250, $300, tax and shipping. Now, as I first mentioned, I was talking about the Ducati quick shifter. There is some adjustability, as I mentioned in my first videos when I installed this. I'm trying to stay out of my light. There is some adjustability here with this rear piece. As you loosen the bolt, the adjuster bolt right there, you'll have to take this screw out, and then you'll have to screw that out clockwise or counterclockwise, and that'll raise and lower your shifter lever. Why is this a big deal? Because depending on, if you have a 13 foot or a 12 foot, or like me, I have a 9.5 or 10. I don't have super big feet. I don't have wide feet. I don't wear heavy shoes or riding boots. I typically will wear tennis shoes. I wear lightweight tennis shoes, and don't judge me for, what I ride with. Yes, a riding boot in the ultimate situation of a crash is going to be more protective, but it's my choice, and I just choose to ride in tennis shoes. But when I sit on the motorcycle, let me get on here. When I sit on the motorcycle, and depending on my riding position and my height and my knee to my ankle, when I pull in my clutch or I do a quick shift, as you can see, my main motion with how I like to ride with my foot right here, the shifter should be about right in here. See, I haven't even touched my shifter yet. See, now that's my shifter. The shifter point should be about right in here. So my shifter is too high for me. And so every once in a while, I'll hit a false neutral because I get lazy or I don't fully make the full movement of my foot. See, a lot of people, you only have a certain amount of movement in your ankle. And see, I'm getting close to the end of that arch, to the ability to be able to pull up that lever really well. So I need to move my lever down. And so when I go to shift, it'd be nice to have that pedal a little bit lower so that my movement is more about right in there when it hits the shifter up. And vice versa, if it's down too low, then you could accidentally bump your shifter. It's just, you want to experiment and make sure that you have the best feel. I need to lower mine down so that the flexibility of my ankle is more in line of me doing a good upshift, so I don't have to really force it up. See what I'm saying? So a lot of people probably have their, when they're complaining about their Ducati quick shifter not shifting correctly, they're probably only giving it a slight nudge and shifting it into a neutral or in between gears. So a lot of tuning goes into adjusting things so that they function correctly, and that's got to make sense to everybody. So I'm going to lower mine down. Also too, when you downshift a Ducati blipper is what they've called it, you've got to be totally 100% off the throttle, and you've got to step down on with a lot more force than what you would do if you had your clutch pulled in and you were driving around normally. Also too, you've got some adjustability here on your rear brake lever. So you can raise your brake lever up or you can lower your brake lever. And all this is done with the adjustability of the nuts right on here, and you just get 2 crescent wrenches or wrenches of that nature, and you just tighten or loosen those up, and you can see your lever drop down or your lever move up. I'd love to get into more detail to show you. It's a little more complicated than that, but with this in the way, I mean, you should be able to get in here. Yeah, you can clearly, there's where you would put one wrench and then the other box end wrench, and then you would go away from each other to loosen those and tighten them the other way. But again, you want to extend that out to lower and raise, and that just depends on your riding position. If I ride on more of the balls of my feet and then I move forward depending on the angle of my knee to my leg, I may want this down a little more. I think I've got my brake lever adjusted pretty well, but if you're a person that's more casual riding and you sit down more or you sit further back on the seat, or maybe your legs, your lower portion of your legs are shorter, you may have a problem. You may want to have this in this braking area and it's down here. So you may want to raise that up so you can adjust, so you can hit your brakes better. So a lot of adjustability built into this so you can customize everything to your riding position. My shoe, and a shoe compared to, now don't get this wrong, this is a motocross boot, but a riding boot, a specific motorcycle, sport bike, cruiser riding boot is going to be different than a tennis shoe and not quite as bulky as a full motocross boot, but you can see how much more slim and lower profile my tennis shoe is compared to a motocross boot to flex your ankle and to shift. So that's why you're going to have that ability to adjust your brake lever and your shift lever. So important to kind of see that difference there between a shoe, and a work boot even, or a more riding boot, or in the most extreme, a motocross boot. See how much more wider and bigger that is, and it's a lot more stiff in the shift area. So it just rides different. So that's why you need to adjust your shifter to the type of footwear that you're using, or you will predominantly be using. Hopefully this video was entertaining as well as informative. Let me know what you think. Chime in. Love to hear from people. But I think this is a big deal. I can't express or explain when I get my an electric bike that I have, or my mountain bike, or my motocross bikes, or my street bikes, how much time I spend adjusting my levers, getting those in the right position up and down, and as far as in and out on my handlebars. And then the reach would be really nice to adjust. I try to do the best I can without going out and spending $300 on levers, but also too, very important to get your shifter in the right position and your brake pedal, your foot controls in the right position, so that it's easier for you to use them so that the bike functions better. Hopefully that's clear to everyone and makes sense. You may want to experiment. You may want to, set up a camera and see how your foot's shifting. But I think if you're mis-shifting, that pretty much that is user error if you're not shifting. The bike is going to shift the way it's going to shift. So you've got to adapt to learn how the bike shifts so that you can make it work better. So I think that one of the best things you can do is adjust your shifter so that you can get a more crisp upshift. Obviously, you're going to get it, pushing down on it's going to be easier but you definitely want to have, right when your brain thinks about shifting up and your foot starts to go, you want to start shifting instead of extremely, or even having to lift up your foot from off your peg a little bit so that you get the shifter to come off. That's the worst scenario. But I've ridden different bikes, with people, how they've set theirs up, and I've wanted to test ride it around the block, and I've had to actually do that. I've had to lift my foot up a little bit more because they rode with boots and I'm riding with tennis shoes, and so to shift, I had to lift up my leg. I couldn't, the arc of my foot wasn't enough to get the shifter to shift up. Anyways, thanks for viewing. Hope you had a good time watching, entertaining, and you learned something again, and catch me out on the next videos. All right, bye-bye. Have a great day, good night, wherever you are.